Hey everyone, this is SVP Paintball. I'm going to break down the NXL Lone Star Open that's coming up here pretty soon. I haven't walked this layout yet, so we're going to learn this together as we usually do. And as always, we're going to walk the baseline first, just see what shots are available. We'll then check out the snake side, we'll then check out the Dorito side, and then we'll check out the middle. So let's go ahead and get started. As I said, I haven't actually walked this layout yet, so all this is going to be new to me. But right off the bat, as you can see, tons of visibility from the back center. I don't know what that glare is that's coming on from the other side, but tons of visibility, as you can see, from both sides of the back center. As you kick out to the can, lots of crossfield shots here. So I imagine, this crossfield shot's definitely a great shot. I imagine a lot of people will be fighting for that. Tons of visibility, heads up. This is gonna be this is gonna be a bloodbath. We'll look at like crossfield holds and stuff here in just a second, but as far as getting past this zone, I mean the can could still be shooting at you as you try to get past this Hertz can to my left. As you go out a little further, back center could definitely be shooting you, especially if you're running high. It'd be coming over this wedge. Otherwise, you could see people playing off the box in this gap, or even running and gunning as you come out here, run and gun up to this wedge. So lots of openings there. If we go to this left side, we have the same crossfield shot from this perspective. So I mean, again, off the break, the shots are crazy. You have so much visibility into the primary bunkers for the number twos on either side of the field. Yeah, I mean, you could just pause here and shoot. Obviously, your visibility is not as good from here. If you tried to play on like either side of the bunker, your visibility isn't as good as it is over the top. And it's not as good as if you were to run and gun. But obviously, running and gunning is tough in and of itself. So really good crossfield shots, pretty decent up the gut shots, actually, very decent. So there's going to be a lot of pressure coming back at the home from probably 3 different people at least. And then again, as we get out further, this is that crossfield shot we looked at before. Interesting, there is a little bit of a blind from this pin. Again, depending on how tall you are or how tall your opponents are, the paint could easily just come over this pin, but that is interesting to note that you could use that a little bit to protect yourself if you wanted to like isolate shots towards the back center or shooting at somebody who might be running up to this mini wall in front of the back center. But nothing too crazy so far. As you get to the can, we'll call it the primary spot for the number 2, I would imagine. Not a ton of visibility into the Doritos once you cross this line past that Dorito 1. And from here, if you were to try to make it out, you do have an over-the-top shot from that mini wall. You do have some shots that could come from, well, probably not. You'd have to be pretty tall. But I'm just curious. We'll look at more who like stops each move here in a second. Mostly just looking for gaps off the break that you'd have to worry about. Yeah, it'd probably be just somebody. It would be somebody pushing up to this mini wall off the break, which I would say is pretty tough, right? Like to run and gun up here, shooting at the back center for sure, and then you would have to use. I can't really demonstrate it here. I might be able to demonstrate it here better, but what I'm really trying to show you is like this gap here. So this is definitely a gap that people could play. I just feel like it's going to be tough to get there and live. So obviously, depending on the skill of the team you're playing against, the division you're playing in will dictate that. But honestly, the lower divisions that you play in, the more I would try to do these types of moves where you're just running and gunning, obviously playing a little lower than what I'm showing here now, but running and gunning, getting to this position and just pumping this zone, using this little, I call it a nipple, but using this little nipple to block the back center, and just be really mindful of like where your loader is sticking out. So as we continue along the baseline, getting past this Dorito 1 into that mini wedge that's to our left is definitely going to be, the tower is going to be a huge problem there. I imagine that everything else isn't as big of an issue. There is probably a bounce shot from the can onto the face of this Dorito that could land here. that might cause problems and prevent you from moving, but we'll look at that in a bit more detail. So really kind of my assessment of just the shots off the break are, I mean, they're pretty standard. I feel like we might discover that there's like this one hidden shot that's really good, especially as we look at like maybe dead spots to play. There is a bit of a zone, like a dead zone you could play right here, whereas you can see like I'm blocking the back center, I'm blocking the can. The value there is you shoot this shot to the people running into the Doritos. The big downside is that if this can decides to just shoot right here off of this can on the Dorito side, it will probably bounce into you. So I guess that's all to say that there's not really just like a free safe spot to shoot. There's always going to be a trade-off. There also is this kneel and shooting for the corner. That does actually seem to be quite safe. There is obviously like an over-the-top shot that could come from the back center and kill you, so be aware of that. But otherwise, this is a pretty decent shot as well. Something we didn't look at initially. I don't think there's any other sorts of like get into an inside bunker and shoot a gap. Everything else looks pretty straightforward. So, and we looked at the can already. The crossfield shots from the can are really good. I would even argue that like there's some decent, you know, this is a really good gap, for example. That's a very good gap to stop the Dorito push coming from this pocket of Doritos up into that wedge. So, at least I believe that's stopping that, right? Is there a Dorito behind that? Behind this? Nope. Yeah, so that's a pretty decent hold. It stops people from getting into that wedge. Definitely a big gap. And honestly, anytime there are crossfield shots into a primary bunker off the break, the thing that I'm always doing is I'm looking for what's the other thing I could do that's crossfield that's still really productive. So obviously this crossfield shot we said was really productive. There is a bit of value here as well. We talked about that. This is definitely a shot that you could prevent somebody from the can breaking out of that spot. And, you know, your mileage will vary based upon the layout at your local field, as well as how the layout's set up at the tournament. So take what I'm telling you with a grain of salt. But that's a really, really decent spot to contain somebody. Again, by continuing this crossfield hold. And then after that, this next shot as well. So obviously the tricky part about doing that is that you are taking up prime real estate on the snake side to fight into the snake by shooting this crossfield shot. So it's always a fine balance of knowing how long to stay on that job versus just playing heads up and pushing down your side of the field. In terms of snake stuff, so we said we'd look at the snake side first. Kind of already assessed the threats off the break. Back center, obviously. Crossfield shots coming in from the can we noted, as well as this kneeling shot that would be shooting at you. So that kneeling shot would threaten this position. You'd be coming in from right here. That kneeling shot would definitely be scary to try and get into this corner. So there's at least 3 really solid shots that would try to kill you going into this spot. In terms of getting into the snake through this Aztec in front of us, if we run low enough, then the biggest worry is going to be an over-the-top shot, very likely an over-the-top shot from the back center, as well as somebody running and gunning from the can. The running and gunning from the can is definitely a lot harder, and there isn't really a spot for them to safely stop and shoot you, right? So, like, you can't stop here and shoot. You're not going to be able to get far enough here and shoot, I would imagine. You might be able to, like, run here quickly, but you're just not going to have great visibility. So, is that where that shot was? Oh yeah, that's where that shot is. So if you run quickly and get to here, you could shoot lower, which tells me that you're going to want to be really careful about doing, let me illustrate it here. You're going to want to be, not to say that you shouldn't do this, because, you know, it's hard to avoid, but you're going to want to be really careful about setting a guy here and here off the break. Mostly because those people seem to get chopped up by somebody who's shooting for this shot as they run and gun. Also over the top from the back center. So just be careful. These are different, to be fair, these are different angles in terms of where you arc your gun, but it doesn't take much for them to shoot that, right? So just be very careful. Ways in which you can avoid that. Obviously, you could delay from the back center as the number 2. You could send your number 1 here and your number 2 here to avoid that gap. There's lots of different ways, lots of creative ways you could think. And again, it's not the worst thing to send somebody here and here off the break. It's just something to be mindful of. You could also avoid it by doing this, right? Lots of different ways. So, and you know, from the shots from the back center, if you were to take this move off the break, the nice thing is if you do make this move off the break and you live and you crawl all the way up here, you relieve a ton of pressure for your team behind you. So if you do get a guy up here very quickly through this route and you did delay from the back center like this, you essentially free up like all of this space behind them because you will very likely draw the guns to this guy in front. So that gives you a lot of freedom to play back here, which does mean that, you know, for the, you know, opposite players here, you want to make sure to shoot this spot a lot, as much as possible, to keep people out of that zone. So when we looked at that earlier, that's, I mean, it's a really, really narrow gap. You know, you pretty much have to shoot that off the break right here. That's the shot, I would imagine. You could do it here as well. You could do it here. So there's definitely ways to stop it. It's not safe. It's just short. So be mindful of that. I would probably say start off practice by trying that move and shooting for that move yourself, and then go from there. Kind of work backwards. Make sure that you can consistently shoot somebody who's trying to make that move off the break, because if not, you're going to lose a lot of games from that move, I would say. So continuing our snake analysis, we have... if you stand tall, you can shoot this person. If you get low, you can avoid them and wrap and shoot the can, the mini Aztec into the snake, the wedge, the mini wall, the can on the Dorito side, that wedge that's on the fort. Well, your wedge, so I don't imagine that would be the case. You could wrap farther, but I would not. So there's definitely a lot of people to shoot at from here. You're very likely going to be shooting at the Aztec and the wedge and the mini wall. I don't imagine a lot of people are going to stop at this Aztec and shoot snake side. I could see a situation maybe where they stop Aztec and shoot Doritos, just because there's obviously these huge gaps you can see from that Dorito 1 to the mini wedge, Dorito 1 to this Dorito 2 right here, baby Dorito to the same bunkers. You also have this massive gap from the Dorito side up into that wedge. Or is that a brick? Oh, that's the 50 brick. So you have a ton of coverage here. I don't really see any reason to stop here and look snake side because you're just completely exposed to whatever's happening in the snake. So this is to say that, you know, this is a move in which if you find that your Dorito side's getting pushed in really quickly and you're able to make this move safely, you could dive very quickly and then contain the Dorito side from this position. That would be a great containment gap or containment zone, assuming, again, you could get your player in there safely. Sorry for a dog that you're going to be hearing. So really, really great zone. Again, if they get past that zone, you could also do this. This just does mean that what you don't want to do is you don't want to have somebody in the can looking Dorito side and somebody on the snake looking snake side, because you're just going to get shot in the back. So, okay, we established that. When it comes to being in the snake, let's go up to this snake. Now, this layout is saying it is not a true wire. Let's see if that's the case. Yeah, that's not a true wire. So this first mini brick is inset from the snake wire. You do have a really nice wrap shot that's, I would say, fairly safe. Because of that, fairly safe from the snake wire. You do have a really solid wrap shot onto that Dorito 1, the baby Dorito, a little bit into that mini wedge, though I don't think you're going to kill anybody there. They could be shooting back at you and surprise you or maybe hold you here, but nothing too crazy. I imagine this is definitely going to be an angle you're gonna look to check off. Sorry, that's my Slack, by the way. So... big gap here as well to hold, but I wouldn't do that from this position. If you were to hold that gap, I'd go to this next bunker and then do it from this position. So what we're noticing so far, what I'm noticing is that there are a ton of crossfield shots from the snake onto the Doritos that I think benefit the snake a lot. Really the biggest threat in any of these kinds of situations when you are wanting to shoot crossfield as a snake attacker is just getting shot in the back or like dropping your pressure on the snake side to do that. So... You know, and it's not one where, for example, you know, there's some layouts where you would want to double up this position. We've seen that a lot this year and last year, where you'd have like a 1 and 2 in this position. The reason why you don't want that is because the number 2 in this situation can't do anything. You could do the opposite, where you could have, you know, your number 2 behind shooting Dorito away and this guy wrapping. That's possible, I suppose. But it seems to be that you're getting a lot of productivity out of this type of play than maybe more so this type of play. So let's you know, because there's crossfield shots here. They're just not as good. They're not as good as the snake 2 because of this big gap that you see. So again, if we continue, well, really the question that we have to ask ourselves is what stops us from getting from this position to the next? And it would be a high Dorito shot. Or maybe actually not even a high Dorito shot. I think at the Dorito 1 looking crossfield, maybe the baby as well could probably drop a shot in on your pack. Especially the Dorito 1 standing tall could do it. I don't think the wedge could shoot you, but maybe if they aim really low, they might be able to. I can never remember in here, place object. Oh, that's right. So let's place next object. 1 second. Hold G to delete all objects. Okay, here we go. So let's check this out. Let's see if we were to try to move place object. Okay, let's go test it out really quick. Obviously, it's not going to be perfect. And you know, the amount of times that I've walked a field in person and said, "Oh, this gap is really good. This angle's really good," and then turns out the tournament it's like not that at all. There's quite a bit. Okay, so you can easily shoot that. Can you shoot it here? Yeah, easy. Yeah, so there's definitely a hold from that Dorito 1 into this position, into the next spot. That's if you go on the outside. Obviously, if you go on this inside route, that Dorito can't stop you. So, perfect. Okay, into the Dorito, or into the Snake 2, we'll call it. I'm not going to give you guys call outs. You guys can figure this out yourselves. The home here, you know, I used to say, oh, you know, you could crawl into this shot. The truth is, like, probably not. If the home stands up or shoots high on that bunker, they will shoot your pack. So I don't think you can ignore the home player. And now you have 2 angles you have to fight from. You have to shoot the wire and then the person stopping you. The home player is definitely concerned. You might be able to get underneath the guns of the guy kneeling in that mini wall in front of it. Just because I'm assuming that the only reason the home player can see this move is because they're standing tall. I assume you can get low enough otherwise from the mini W, unless they were to play this nipple right here, which is obviously a threat. The can player could see you as well. Let's take a look at it from the can player's perspective. Well, we'll do it from the home first. So like I said, the home player definitely can see this shot. Oh, let me reload. So the home player can definitely see this shot. I would say that's definitely a stop. And this player as well, I think, can stop this. So not a free move. You could make it if people weren't aware of you in this position. So, but if they're shooting at you, you can't ignore it. Oh, we're here. Maybe I was shooting the wrong gap, but I think it's still true. I think anything now at this point crossfield you could get below. Maybe a Dorito player standing tall would shoot your pack, but I'm just not super confident in that. Otherwise, if you're crawling here, you could very likely get into this position. Again, that's my slack. Please ignore. So that's good to know. Crossfield stuff still really the same, right? Like we've got massive gaps from the Doritos into the wedge up to the 50. Really, really, really good crossfield shots. The biggest issue now is you got to be concerned about what's going on the snake side. So let me just, all right. So yes, very, very interesting. Let me see. Okay, so what stops us going from here to the 50, right? I guess this is technically like the 50 box. We'd call this gap in here the Viper, but the can I think is too far. You're too close to the can for them to shoot your pack, I imagine. But this is now where you're starting to threaten the can player a lot. Now you can't ignore the back center because they could always wrap on the snake on the Dorito side and kill you over the top. This mini wall could kill you. Even the even the Aztec and the snake could kill you if they hard wrapped, but so you can't ignore those positions, but you can get a really, really solid shot here on this can. The Dorito player is still safe. There's no free kills yet. I would imagine a wrap on the wedge is, you know, gonna do a lot for you, but again, no free kills so far. But the can player is now really feeling a lot of pressure, and that's typically true when there are cans in those positions. Getting up into the 50, which is really what, past the 50-yard line now, when you're actually in their little mini box or mini brick. Can player is probably dead. I would imagine you could get a pack kill. If not, they're like playing behind their bunker with their hands up in the air. Dorito player still not dead for free. Baby Dorito player is really hurting at this point. The mini wedge player, you could probably get a kill here. Not free, but definitely a solid kill. Dorito player here can live behind their bunker if they just get dug in really strong, but you're probably going to kill this person. But I would also be very careful about this person looking your way at this point. And then you definitely chop up anybody along the 50-yard line as you get to here. So anything past this position is on you to look, right? What we're here to figure out is what stops us from moving to the next spot, and then just any sort of free kills that exist before you get past the 50-yard line. Past the 50-yard line, everybody's pretty much exposed to you. So really the can player, I would say, is like a really, really big target for you. And the snake, you want to pick that guy out if you can, as much as possible. And anybody that would be playing the center tower is also, you know, kind of asking for it in this snake position. I imagine that even by the time you get to this spot, they're not looking at you, but you could absolutely take them out from this position. So I don't imagine people are going to be playing that center tower a ton. It might be like a stopgap into the wedge or into some other bunker like the 50 brick, but definitely be looking for that player as well. There's obviously like a ton of angles onto people from each of these bunkers, but like I said, what I'm mostly worried about is how can we get into these spots and how can we move up the field. So as you walk the field as a snake player, as always, it's your responsibility to, you know where the shots are and make sure that when you come out of your bunker, your shot is dialed in for that reason, because you know where those shots are. To look at the bunkers behind the snake wire, there is not a ton of control, I would say, that you have on the snake from the can, but anything prior to the snake, you have a lot of visibility. So at least you have visibility from anybody trying to make a move from the can outward. But obviously, if they take this inside route, you know, you could lose track of them. So this inside route up to this Aztec, you'd lose track. Outside that bunker, you wouldn't, but you do lose like the view of somebody going in that inside route and up into the snake. So this tells me that you're going to need some kind of up the center visibility, which will likely come from some kind of crossfield hold on the Dorito side or somebody from the Doritos themselves seeing this. So like, depending on where they came from, if it's from the mini brick, you're going to have the home player that will see it. If it's from the can, you'll see that guy making that move into there. If it's from maybe the baby Dorito, you can see this as well. But you're not going to get a ton of intel on that inside snake move, that inside route right here, without some kind of cross-field shot giving you that visibility. So think about, after the breakout, you need to have some kind of game plan that will give you that visibility. And if you lose that player, just know that that's the first thing you should be worried about. So as a snake player, as a home player, if you notice that your teammate dies out of one of those spots that was looking cross field, you just need to immediately be cautioning that move and try to find a way in which you can either match the move, get wide, prevent the snake bleeding, do something to not just get surprised by it, because what you don't want is you don't want to be shooting this crossfield gap. You lose a teammate in one of these two spots, and then now you're getting shot in the pack because somebody's like standing tall in this snake. So let that be kind of a sequence of events for you to figure that out. And then this is kind of that's kind of center stuff. So we'll leave this wedge out of it, and we'll leave the mini wall and that tower when we talk about the center. So that's the snake side. Now we're going to talk about the Dorito side. So let's look at that really quick. So again, we already talked about lots of crossfield shots from this can over to that Hertz can on the snake side. You don't have any shots. You do have a shot into the snake itself here. Oh, wait, no, that's actually not a shot into the snake. That isn't anything. So you don't, actually. It doesn't seem to be that you have any shots once they're in the snake, but you have, of course, this shot that's on that inside route. So obviously if they went to the Hertz bunker and then into the snake, you don't have that visibility as much, but you do have this shot, which is a thing. You will, they could certainly get low enough, I think, to avoid it. Like if that paint's coming in, it's going to be over the pin. So it's very likely a little high, and therefore you could go underneath it up the middle towards this inside snake route. You might even be able to go under it out to this, Plano, Texas, Plano Tortilla Factory bunker, the snake corner, I would call it. So this crossfield shot is really strong. And the trade-off is that you lose, these gaps that you could be holding into the Doritos. That's the trade-off that you're making. But I would argue that a lot of the kills are going to come, you're going to be surprised more by the snake side, which is pretty typical. You're going to be surprised more by the snake side than you will be by the Dorito side. But what this also tells me is that there's probably going to be, I would imagine that a lot of the breakouts are going to look like this. We're not going to really establish where the Dorito 1 is just yet. It's somewhere over here. But this tells me that a lot of the play is going to be here until this guy can get to this spot. And then from here, this dude is going to look cross. This guy's going to try to get into the snake, and this dude's going to follow behind him. I imagine that's what a lot of the game is going to look like. And the reason is just because this crossfield shot is just so good. This crossfield shot from the Aztec is very, very good. You have the ability to stop a move from the Dorito can into the Doritos, or the Dorito 1 up until pretty much anything else in the Doritos. And then even further, you have the ability to stop this Dorito 3 or mini wedge Dorito wedge up into the 50 brick. And you also have this inside route too, which I know we're not supposed to be talking about middle stuff, but you also have this route as well. So if they do get past this gap that you were holding originally, this Dorito 1 gap for some reason, if they get past that, you can move past one more bunker, and now you have the next gap that you can hold. So this is a really, really good spot to play in. The only thing is you can't do those moves if you have no snake side presence. So if you are in that Aztec and you lose your wide guy and the dude behind you fills out and you also lose him, you have to become the snake attacker. You can't afford not to. So you do lose the hold on the Dorito side, but that just is what it is. So again, we have the ability to contain the Doritos. We don't need to do it from these two gaps, as long as we can get somebody up into this mini wedge and up into or mini W and then up into the Aztec. Otherwise, if not, we can play a heads-up battle until they get to the Dorito 1, and otherwise you're just kind of useless after that, I would say, from the Doritos perspective. The Dorito 1, as we established earlier, has really, really, really good crossfield shots. And the question is, do I need to get up the snake side or the Dorito side quickly? Is that a concern of mine? Obviously, really, really, really great dominance down the Dorito inside wire, you could call it. This is not a true wire either, like the snake side. So you do have, anytime there isn't a true wire, it gives you a lot of opportunity to wrap on the outside of the field and then get shots in towards the middle, which means that the middle is going to get a lot of heat. So you're going to want to get out of the middle as much as possible because all eyes are going to be on you, right? We already established there's some really good inside shots from the mini wall, from the brick behind it, towards the Doritos in the middle. And the same is going to be true on the Dorito side. So you're going to have really good shots in towards the home, the tower here, a little bit towards that mini wall that's in the center of the field, though not as good. If we back up farther, you have a gap that you can hold from the back center. Again, applying pressure to the tower. You can't do this as freely because of that inside Dorito wire, but you also do have, I guess you could do this. I don't know why you would, but you could back up here as long as there's nobody in this tower, and I guess the can, so probably not. Yeah, I don't think you could do that. But you could back up and make this route into that spot if you needed to. But otherwise, let's go farther. So what stops us from going from the baby into the Dorito 1? It would be the can, your mirror, the back center, I believe. Nope, just kidding. The tower and this Aztec. So like you can see from the Doritos perspective, that Aztec is incredibly oppressive. There is so much visibility that guy has. So if you're in this position, fortunately you can fight them from here to work your way out. It's really hard to fight somebody that way and also make sure that nobody's putting paint down this inside wire to kill you. So it is tough. You can't really just if you do it quickly, you could, but it's going to be hard to shoot this, check off the tower, and then wrap this guy and go. That's a lot of bunkers that are, you know, the angles or the degree of angle is really wide to do all of those things. Just also be careful not to, you know, you can fight this guy and then take an inside wrap that I would say is pretty safe to shoot these two people and isolate wherever the Dorito attacker is so he can't see you. Be careful about doing that and then into this baby Dorito, because I imagine that this is like most baby Doritos. This is very much so a stopgap into that next bunker, but you'll notice that like you didn't really improve your ability to fight out of this spot, and you're now in a smaller bunker. Like you're now getting pressured a lot more from the snake side. So be very careful about making that move as a way to progress up the Dorito side. Like it's certainly a bunker you could take if you wanted to get into the Doritos quickly, like right here. You could take that inside Dorito route, get here, but this is gonna be a tough spot to get out of. And the quicker you can do it, the better, because the person that's going to be in that Aztec shooting cross field will likely not be established yet. So if you're able to slide in here, get quickly on your knees or feet, shoot the people that are going to be stopping you heads up, and then almost just blind taking this bite, you will probably be safe, because the can't shoot you. The guy in the Aztec that's wanting to shoot you is probably not there yet. Nobody's going to be in this tower by that point unless they were running and gunning off the break. And at that point, you just die. Like there's you know, if this dude was making this move off the break and this guy on your team didn't shoot that guy. So let me just illustrate this to make it more succinct. If you were trying to get to this spot and the opponent was running and gunning here, shooting at you, and your teammate who was playing this spot, likely shooting crossfield, didn't kill that guy, then you just need to die. That's just all there is to it. That's a counterplay, and you suck. Like, that's just, you guys have to hit the shot, right? So be very careful about that. Okay, getting into this mini Aztec or mini W, again, the same crossfield shot. You could maybe see some crossfield shots from the tower over the top of the Aztec, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think that playing the outside of that snake tower is a lot stronger than any kind of inside shot that you could be looking for. And then when you get here, this is where I was talking about earlier, like the inside shots are really safe. Like at this point, your only concern is either the tower or the home, and they're both very much so the same gap. So the Aztec can't see you anymore, so you've passed its zone of oppression, we'll call it. And now it's just about, you know, assuming that you're making these moves quickly and before they get established in the snake, now you're able to make these moves before too much worry. The biggest concern is going to be if somebody dives into the Aztec and gets to that mini wall in the snake quickly, and you're maybe, I don't know, even 3 to 4 seconds behind that. You take this move, you shoot here, and then you don't even, like, you run and dive, or you don't. It doesn't matter. This guy is going to kill you. So getting a real strong sense of where they are at in the snake before you commit to this move is going to be very, very important. You could check for yourself to some extent, maybe, by coming up over the top. You know, like if you're, for example, if you're here and shooting, you could stand up here and see, and you're relatively safe, right? No one on the Doritos is probably going to hit you. A guy in a can could, but we've already established that guy is probably shooting crossfield because it's so good. So you really have 1, maybe 2 guns to worry about when you stand up like this, and this will give you some pretty decent visibility if there's a guy in the snake looking your way to kill you. So I would, as a Dorito player, check that off. You can't do that every point, though. If you start making, if every time you go to that bunker, you do that move, people are going to know, and they're going to just start putting paint there. So just do that wisely. If I knew that I was too slow, like if I knew that I was behind tempo with the rest of the team, and getting up to my bunker, which is this, that would be the situation in which I would check that shot. But if I know, like, I got into my bunker quickly, I immediately check this spot off, I know that the chances of that guy being in that position that early is pretty low, I wouldn't bother. I would just go right away. All right, we've established that the crossfield gap hold is really strong here, but now is when you really run the risk of just dying to some kind of crossfield snake play that admittedly would be very hard for your team to like accurately communicate to you very quickly. So I don't love, especially when you're this far up, I don't love like crossfield holds like this where you're watching some kind of inside gap with all of the snake side glaring at you. So when you get here, you're really just going to want to play on the outside of this bunker and try to control the wire as much as you can. So playing over the top of this corner, again, continually shooting the back center if they're still there. Being now more concerned with not only the Aztec, but the mini wall, because this guy can, both of those people can see you very clearly. They will very likely be looking your way. Be very careful about that. And let this also be a reminder that you need to get out of the back center, right? We've shown so many angles now from both sides of the field that the back center is just visible from every angle. So use the back center as a stopgap and get out of there quickly. Like, get out of the back center as much as possible. Get out of the center as much as possible, unless you're like really far up the field and you have a plan to like really, really chop off a huge chunk of the field for your opponents. So, because otherwise you're just going to die. So we have some inside routes we could take. None of them are free. You back center if they're there. The Hertz bunker, if they're still looking your way, would kill you. So nothing is free here. But the wrapping on the outside, a lot safer. Again, if you know the back center's dead, like the middle player's dead, this is where you can kind of inch forward and shoot at the Aztec, assuming they're not in the snake. Shoot at the Aztec and get up here. If they are in the snake, all of this is just slowed way down. Like, you need to be okay to play in your bunker very, very slowly from this position. Because by the time you get here, this is so far up the field that you do need to be worried about somebody being in the snake and looking your way. So be very careful to make this next move, and be also very careful to like make this move, right? This inside Dorito route, I think, is a little bit of a bait, mostly because you are inset from the wire, so you lose visibility on somebody coming on the outside. You only really have the same gaps you already had, and you still have the same issue with the snake player, who might still be looking your way, both in several spots. So the only one you kind of lose visibility of is this mini wall, which you have to, pass his zone before you get to there anyway. So I would not make this move if it were me. Like, you, I suppose, could do it on the inside, but all of the problems that we just outlined where there could be a snake eye looking your way are made worse. So this is one where you're going to want to play on this side of the bunker as much as possible. Be very careful about doing this stuff. If you are like super hard stuck here, you could maybe make yourself useless and do this, or useful, excuse me, and do this as just a way to keep their heads down. Like, I don't want you to avoid this entirely, but whatever you do, do not start here and hold that angle and then realize, oh, I can't progress, and then switch. If you are going to do that, you need to be extremely careful. Like, you need to come and hold this angle first and then check off the 50. Like, that should be the first thing you do. Okay, 50 is clear. Now check off the mini W. But you need to be extremely careful, because if you don't hold that angle to start, holding it anytime after that is way more dangerous. So this getting up to the 50 is tough, and as we talked about earlier, you're not even entirely safe from the snake. So I would try not to get to this spot unless you have killed somebody on the Dorito side and you are able to play on this side of the bunker. If you're able to play on this side and away from the snake, you can play in this position. But otherwise, if there's still somebody along the Dorito wire, they certainly could be, in this Dorito 1, and you could play here safely. But if they're even in this mini W, or excuse me, mini wedge, this is just really, really risky. So try to have somebody eliminated first before you come here. And then once you get to this spot, you need to try and close the game out pretty fast. Pretty much the only way that you survive here, if not, is if their whole Dorito side is gone. And then all you're really waiting for is for your snake side to clear out the field, because you've drawn the guns from that side. So you can play slow if that's the case. If you know there's only snake side players left and they're shooting cross field. But if there's even a guy in the can, like, you kind of need to make something happen here. You don't need to run down the field and just die to the guns looking cross field, but you do need to be proactive, because at any moment this guy could just make a run and just shoot you out of your spot, and you just had no way of knowing. There's no real way that somebody's going to communicate that to you quick enough and you survive that situation. So just be very, very careful about, playing in this 50 brick without the Dorito side either being completely gone, or at least one player who is the widest, preferably, is gone. Okay, let's now finish with the back center. And we will go from there. So back center, we already talked about tons of angles here off the break. Try to get out of it very quickly. One of the ways in which you can, improve your survivability is just getting here even up into this mini wall and looking cross. This, unfortunately, this is not a good gap to hold off the break, because you're just conceding everything before then. You can possibly, as we mentioned earlier, standing just a little bit over the top of this mini W, shooting towards the Dorito side. I would say that's a very strong gap, assuming that you can play safe. Your barrel doesn't get shot. Your loader doesn't get shot. Like, you know how to play tight. This is actually a really, really good hold on the Dorito side. You don't have nearly as much control on the snake side. So this is very likely what you will do, depending on which side of the field you want to shoot off the break. But be comfortable in trying over the top shots to start, and also don't be afraid to like send somebody off the break here, running and gunning towards this gap, and then switching here while your home player from the back center is shooting towards the snake way. Because I would say that that's a decent cross instead of this guy shooting heads up towards the corner and this guy shooting Dorito way. There's just not really anything you can see Dorito side. The shot towards that primary bunker on the can is pretty slim. You do have some over-the-top stuff, but that's only if they're running tall. And you don't really have any other Dorito gaps except for somebody who's running deep past that mini wedge into the big wedge, like off the break, which obviously is always a chance. There's always a chance for stuff like that, but the chance is not as likely. So this tells me that what will probably happen is this bunker will naturally be inclined to shoot Dorito way, and this guy will naturally be inclined to shoot snake way. But that does mean that if you decide to send a dude here shooting cross, you don't need to do that just yet. You can do something like this. That's also an option. The other thing you can do is you can do something like this. And then this person off the break shoots snake way and then goes here. Again, the home side Dorito shot isn't as good. It's just if you needed some kind of survivability on the Doritos by pulling short. I don't know why I'm drawing the ones like that. I just realized. So that would be another option. So this is the snake 1 attacker, snake 2 attacker, home. You realize there's not like a ton of space. Oh, we could probably just do this then. We would do the 1, 2, 3, 2, 1 is probably what it would be. That's a pretty standard, like, across the baseline, across the backline play. And then the guns that you would see are going to be somewhere towards the Dorito side. Not great, as we've established. This guy shooting cross off the break. This dude shooting Dorito snake way and then running up. This guy shooting cross. And then your guy risking his body out into the snake corner. What this gives us is 4 guns off the break. And then it gives us 2 guns on the Dorito side and 2 guns on the snake side. So we have really good coverage. We have pretty decent survivability. I would probably say that this shot is going to be real. Like, this is going to be very scary over the course of the tournament. And depending on the division you're in, you might have to dive into this position. So I imagine, the higher up the divisions you go, this is way less safe than how I'm characterizing it. And even in like D3, D4 even, this is probably becomes less of a safe move by the time you hit Sunday. So be aware of that. Other things that you can do, we didn't really walk the middle, so I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. Let's do that just super fast. We've already talked about some of the routes you could take up into this can. What I would say is if you are consistently winning this off the break shot right here, if you're winning this, you definitely want to run up here and then hold the snake side. You definitely want to do this. This is like the most oppressive thing you could do. So even if there's a dude that like you shoot, let's say you shoot their number 2 and there's a guy that gets into the snake from this position, like he dives into the snake and he's going to be here. I would wrap the back center. And this is off the break, right? We've established you off the break ran, you shot out the Hertz can. Somehow they get wider than that. If they're in the corner, it's even better for you. But if they get into this inside snake route, just wrap the home and push up into this 50 brick and then post up on this dude. And just stare at this guy and wait and see what happens. You will probably kill him. If you don't kill him and he surprises you somehow, you could still you could back up and maybe shoot on the outside, but this is where you're going to need to now make something happen. You are going to probably have to do something on the Dorito side and take somebody out with you to make this worth it. If you just try to keep holding this cross field gap like this, you're just going to get shot in the back from the Doritos. So otherwise, ideally, you shoot the snake guy as well. Then you wrap on the home and you now become extremely oppressive, hopefully eventually picking him off or just waiting long enough for your snake side to push that side of the field. You kill that guy and now you're just wrapping on the Doritos and it's all over. So that's the threat that exists from this position specifically. It's just really, really scary that if this Dorito player wins, and worse yet, like imagine that this guy, let's imagine that they, instead of even going wide on the snake side, let's imagine that this was the play, that they went here and here, and this dude was going to try to go up this spot, and he was holding this gap. Well, now all of a sudden, this dude dies. They have no snake presence. You ran up here, and now this is even worse for them, right? Now there's no way they're getting out into the snake. So that's true for you. Like, be very careful about making this play, because we talked about, you know, be careful about this, right? We talked about this. Be careful about making this move. You both die to the same gaps off the break. So be careful. This, just to be clear, the gap is this. It's this point and this point. Those are the same gaps. So be careful about that. But it's, I would say even more so, be super careful about dying out of this position and being stuck here, because that's when like teams will rapidly you know, suffocate you from the snake. So the opposite may be true as well, that if you run and gun out to this spot, you kill the Doritos, you could get low, dive into this Aztec right here, and then oppress the snake side, or excuse me, the Dorito side. So you do have the ability to do something similar, and assuming that they stopped at the Dorito 1. So if they got past the Dorito 1, you could go a step farther. You just have to make sure, you just have to double check a few spots. But if you do this within the first 5 to 10 seconds of a point, you run up here, now you have the visibility you need to do essentially the same thing you were doing on the Dorito side. So this is a very standard if A then B. If this player is, so in the first scenario, if this player out of the can dies, take this route and oppress. The opposite is true. If this guy dies, as you come here, make this move, hold this first gap. If they haven't passed the zone, if they haven't passed this, if they pass that zone, go to the next spot and hold this gap. Anytime you make these moves, you know, the longer it takes you to make those moves, the less safe it becomes. You can't take them for free. So just know that if you make this sequence of events in 5 seconds or 10 seconds, pretty safe. If you make it past 10 seconds, you have to be super careful about people here, like lots of different ways, right? The best case scenario, you kill both of these people off the break. Your number 2s push up to these positions, and now you have insane zone control. You have insane oppressive zone control. Even if they have one person wide here and one person wide here, this is extremely suffocating to have 2 people in this position, and that will work as long as you have one person on the outside of them in both situations. If you have one dude at least alive on either sides of the field, this is fine. But the moment that, like, let's say, for example, you pushed into this position, your number 2 is behind you, and this guy dies, you need to get out of there and try to get into the snake. And the same is true here. If you're in this position, your outside Dorito guy dies, you need to find some kind of way to get out of this spot, because that's when you're going to be in trouble, when these people are going to start getting up close and killing you. So we kind of already talked about the middle. The middle to me is very if A then B. There's always, obviously, you know, huge traps you could set, gaps to hold. The middle is always hard to walk because it's so much creativity, and it's always really, really specific on the scenario and what's going on. So very, very difficult to just say this is how you play the middle. It's kind of a feel position anyway, which is one of the reasons I love the middle. But big takeaways here. We already talked about the if A then B plays on these crossfield shots off the break. Don't be afraid to change it up too. Like, you don't always have to do that. Like, if you find that as you're shooting crossfield, they just keep getting out to this corner, the shot up to this mini wall here is really, really good at killing that guy. So don't be afraid to change it up. Even this dude could do it as well. It's just not as good. But also the other takeaway from this is try as best you can to avoid the back centers after the breakout. Try to get out of here as quickly as you can. There's lots of follow-ups to this, so lower divisions can do this more often than higher divisions, but you're probably pretty safe to get into this Dorito 1 off the break in lower divisions, and you're probably pretty safe to get into one of these 2 spots off the break in lower divisions, which means that you've really freed yourself up to do a very standard You know, what would that be? Like 2-1-2. That's what I'm thinking. It would be a very standard 2-1-2 breakout. So you have people evenly dispersed along the back line. And then, you know, depending on what you're comfortable with, these players get up farther. So, and then from here, you allow yourself off the break to, you free yourself up to push up to this bunker. You could also make this move. This is a big move, but you could make it as well. It really just kind of depends on what's happening. And just know that, like, the impetus for you moving to this spot is, did I kill the can? And your impetus for moving to this spot is, did I kill the can? That's like, that should be your first consideration. Did I kill the can? If you did kill the can, you have a lot of freedom to oppress the person beyond this point. Just know that, like, the farther up the field they get, the scarier it gets for you. And you also have to be careful that, like, for example, if you lose both of your Dorito side players, you cannot make this move. You remember, the other rule is you always have to have somebody in this position for you to be able to safely play here. And you always have to have somebody in this position for you to safely play here. Like, just always. You just cannot survive holding a crossfield gap with this entire zone completely open, and same is true for this. Cannot have this entire zone's opened for them while you're trying to play this spot shooting crossfield. So as you play, whether you're a 2 or a 3, be thinking in your mind those 2 checks. Is the can player dead? Do I have somebody that will be playing essentially behind me, protecting me on that side of the field? In terms of, like, other creative routes, there's there's always something. But if I've learned anything in the last year of paintball, like watching it and doing the telestrations that I do on Go Sports, it's that you really don't need to be very creative. Execution matters way more than creativity. Like, if you have a really, really solid game plan, and you or rather a really safe game plan, and you execute it really well, you're going to win every game than somebody who's super creative and has an exact counter to what you're doing, but just executes it extremely poorly. And the opposite is true as well. Like, if you have a really creative game plan and you execute it really well, and they have a really safe game plan and they execute it really poorly somehow, like, you will win. But that just, again, further demonstrates that execution is way more important than the game plan itself. And my example of that is PB Fit in every finals game they've played. PB Fit didn't really change their game plans in the last 2 events. Like, they just ran the same breakouts every single point. They matched pretty much every move that their opponents made, in terms of, like, they played along the baseline pretty much every single point, and they would make these secondary moves after the breakout, but they always tried to have like 4 to 5 guns up. And then once they oppressed their opponents, they got 1 or 2 kills off the break. That's when they would make their moves. And so if you shoot people off the break, you're going to win your games. Therefore, let's focus on shooting people off the break rather than trying to play 5v5 games where we have to send bodies in these weird spots that are really risky just to try and win. So I know it's easier said than done, obviously. It's paintball. That's just how it goes. But focus way more on execution of a game plan rather than the creativity of a game plan, I should say. That's it. Hopefully not too long. Yeah, 53 minutes, not too bad. But if you guys are playing in the event, I would actually really like to hear what team you're playing for and the division you're playing for down in the description below. And yeah, good luck, guys, in the event. I hope you have a successful event, and I will see you later.